Welcome, everybody, to the New York Sports Rush, part of the Bet Rivers Network. And we are joined today by Mark Feinsand, MLB insider and contributor, and, of course, senior national writer for MLB.com. You see him on MLB Network. And the latest, well, it seems like a new column every day. I mean, there's plenty to talk about here. The 2026 all-trade deadline team. You just put up there yesterday, I believe, and there's a lot to get to, Mark. It's going to be an interesting trade deadline season here, just 10 days away. What do you make of what's happening in the American League, in a wide-open American League in particular?
I mean, wide open is putting it kindly, I think, at this point, Adam. You've got every team in the American League except for three: the Royals, the Athletics, and the Angels within 6.5 games of a playoff spot. And I know 6.5 seems like a pretty big mountain to climb at this point with just a little over 2 months left. But
Yeah.
we just saw the Red Sox go on a 15-game winning streak, right? We've seen teams rattle off 10 in a row and knock 4 or 5 games off the standings, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a chance. So the fact that you have 12 teams in the American League and 12 teams in the National League all within 6.5 games, and most of them are much closer than that. The problem for somebody like me this time of year, you mentioned that I'm writing every day.
Yeah.
Trade deadline is probably my busiest, let's call it 2 to 3 weeks of the year. I don't know who the sellers are. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, well, the Mets, the Royals, the A's, the Angels, the Giants, the Rockies, those are the sellers. And you know why they're sellers? Because they don't have that many players that anybody wants. So I don't know what to expect of the trade deadline right now. And I don't think we're going to know what to expect until we hit about August 1st, right? All these teams that we're talking about, these 24 teams, probably 10 or 12 of them could be sellers, could be buyers. The teams at the top are going to try to buy to differing extents. But I think what happens here in the next 8-9 days, you're going to see a frenzy in those final 24 to 48 hours.
I think you're right on the money with that because of the extra playoff spots and because of the closeness, as you said. Teams got to wait. And I think the biggest team that we will ultimately have to wait, maybe even to the last day on, is Detroit and what they're going to do with Tarek Skubal. Because, you can say, well, and then you're right, they're 6.5 out, but they're also significantly under 500. Well, they did just take 2 out of 3 from the Cubs, so that was a nice series win for them. But that's, and I don't, obviously the Mets and probably not the Yankees are going to be involved in Skubal, although the Yankees will be involved with a lot of other guys. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will be involved in Skubal. But obviously he's the biggest piece that could get traded. I don't know. I mean, what do you do? And if you're the Tigers, if you don't trade him, do you almost have to buy instead? Because if you're going to keep him and he's going to walk out the door for nothing at the end of the year, don't you have to go all in? What do you think they do?
That would be a bold move to just turn around and say, you know what? Screw it. We're buying. We're going after it. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they are the key to a lot of teams' trade deadlines, and Skubal is just the big name we're all talking about,
right?
For obvious reasons, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. The Mets will be in on him in the winter. I think Steve Cohen may say, you know what, enough of this not spending on pitching. Let's go get the best guy there is. I think you'll have a lot of the contenders in on him if he's made available, but that may be sort of a last-second sprint because the Tigers are going to give themselves every opportunity to get back in this race. AJ Hinch said the other day that they've been playing Game 7 since May, basically. When you start out 22-38, that's what happens. You put yourself in a whole 16 games under 500, and you've got a very little margin for error at that point. It's not even just Skubal. Casey Mize could be a great trade candidate. They've got a couple of relievers in Kyle Finnegan, Kenley Jansen, Gleyber Torres' contract is up. So the Tigers could really inject some life into this trade deadline if they decide to sell. I don't think we're going to know that until August 1st or 2nd, maybe even the 3rd. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. We got till 6 p.m. on the 3rd, so anything's possible. Those are going to be some busy early August days. Okay. Yankees yesterday split a doubleheader. They lose the first game. Max Fried comes off the injured list. He pitched great for 5 innings. Obviously, that's big. When you look at the Yankees, they're like every other team in the American League, really like every other team besides the Dodgers, maybe. There's certainly some clear flaws on this team. What do you think is the number one thing the Yankees have to do at this deadline?
Well, the first thing they needed to do is get healthy, and that
Yeah.
started with the return of Max Fried.
Yep.
It's amazing to think that yesterday was the first time that Max Fried and Garrett Cole have been active teammates on the Yankees.
That is
Right. So
crazy.
they did not have the two of them pitching at the same time since Fried came to the Yankees at the beginning of last year. So the fact that they were able to throw them out in 2 games on the same day and that they both pitched very well gives you some hope if you're a Yankee fan, because if you get to the postseason, and we have to assume that they will at least get to the postseason, whether it's
Sure.
as division winner or wild card, and you're throwing out Garrett Cole, Max Fried, and Cam Schlittler as your 1, 2, 3, you've got a shot.
Yes, no
Because
doubt.
those three guys are capable of going out there and just putting up zeros. So to me, the biggest, excuse me, the biggest acquisition the Yankees can make is getting Aaron Judge back. And I know that's such an obvious thing to say,
Yeah.
but he is such a big part of that puzzle. Do they need to upgrade catcher? Yes, they do. Their catching situation has been awful. The problem there is that we can keep talking about Hunter Goodman. He's not getting traded.
Right.
Uh, that's not happening. Why would
Yeah.
the Rockies, who are trying to build something there, trade a guy who's hit 30 home runs in back-to-back years and has 3 more years of control left?
Yeah.
Shea Langeliers with the A's.
Yeah.
He's got 2 years of control left. You're going to have to overwhelm the A's to get him from them. You know, could Francisco Alvarez be made available? We've heard that the Mets are open to pretty much trading anybody other than those core 5.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they would love the idea of Alvarez going across town and thriving with the Yankees and shoving it in their face. So
Yeah.
there aren't a lot of catchers. Adley Rutschman's hurt right now. Plus, Baltimore doesn't really seem inclined to move him. So you're looking at Ryan Jeffers, the other guy who everybody's been talking about. The Twins are buying right now.
Yeah,
the
they're in
Twins
the
are planning
mix.
on being buyers. They are firmly in the mix.
Yeah.
So there aren't a lot of catchers to go get. Tyler Stevenson, Jonah Heim. There's a few names, but nobody who's going to come in here and save the day for the Yankees.
That's fair.
So I think, yes, they'll make some additions. They'll probably add a reliever. They don't need a starter. They need a right-handed bat to plug into that lineup until Judge comes back. But honestly, there's nothing that's going to help them as much as getting Judge back. And as long as he's back sometime in September and he's healthy and ready to roll in October, with that pitching staff and a lineup anchored by Judge, I mean, that's their best bet.
It's a fair point. And when most teams say, well, we just need a guy back, I'm like, that's an excuse not to spend any money. We know that's not the case with the Yankees. Right. But you're right. Aaron Judge is is the straw that stirs the drink for the Yankees 100%. Their lineup is fine. It's okay, but without him, it's not that good. I mean, it's okay. But with him, it's a whole different situation. He makes everybody else better. He makes everybody else dangerous. He takes the pressure off everybody else. So you're 100% right there. I agree they could use some tweaks in the pen. I'm not personally a total believer in David Bednar, but I don't know that they would be able to get somebody better than him anyway at this point. He's been good.
I'm not sure there is a better closer available this year. Everybody was talking, Aroldis Chapman. Well, guess what? The Red Sox aren't selling right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not sure there is a better reliever, a better ninth inning guy than Bednar on the market, whereas last year you had some closers moving.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to end up sticking with Bednar and trying to, fortify that bridge leading up to him.
Speaking of great closers, do you think if you say there's nobody better, then you don't think Mason Miller's available? You think? I know they just traded for him. You don't think obviously they'd have to get such a huge package to trade him, but
I put nothing past AJ Preller. He is an absolute wild man, maverick. Last year at the trade deadline, when he made, I think it was 5 trades involving 22 players.
Right.
Somebody said they really should rename this day after him because we're all just following his lead on these days. Yeah. That said, look, we saw him trade for Soto at the deadline 1 year and then flip him in the offseason a year and a half later. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but the price for Mason Miller is going to be exorbitant, and rightfully so. He's the best reliever in the game. He comes with years of control. That said, I don't see Brian Cashman going out and spending that kind of prospect capital. I mean, you're talking about a George Lombard, you're talking about Carlos Legrand, you're talking about your cream of your crop of your system. From what I understand, the top 2 guys I just mentioned are off the table. They have no plans on trading them. Might you trade one of them if you could get Mason Miller? maybe, but I don't
Yeah.
think one of them is going to get you Mason Miller. So
No.
I'm not saying he's off the table. If I had to, guess right now, I would say that August 4th, he's still a Padre.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right because the price it's going to take, teams probably won't want to give up. I mean, obviously this team control, so it's not like you're just renting him. It's not a Chapman situation like when the Cubs traded for Chapman in 2016. But man, what a difference Mason Miller could
I
make
mean,
on any team.
AJ Preller gave up a top 5 prospect in the game last year to
Yeah,
get him.
yeah,
So you wouldn't think he was going to take anything less than a top 10 prospect in the game back to trade him
agreed.
now. And frankly, very few GMs are willing to put themselves out there and trade a top 5, top 10 prospect for a closer, a guy who's going to throw 60 innings a year for you.
Yeah,
Uh, AJ Preller was the outlier in that group, and I find it hard to believe he's going to move unless it's part of a bigger deal where the Padres can say, "All right, we'll give you Mason Miller. You take Xander Bogaerts' contract with it, and try to
yeah, right.
try to unload some huge salary that they're just underwater on." If they could do something like that, then maybe you're in a different scenario. But I just don't see it.
I want to go back to Judge for a minute because obviously there's a lot of questions about when he's going to come back. I guess it's possible he might not come back. Do you think there's any chance that that's going to happen? Or, I mean, it's just impossible to say right now.
We're at the mercy of team information when it comes to injuries. Everybody that I've spoken to, the Yankees feel confident that he's going to be back. Is that late August? Is that early September? Is it mid-September? We have no idea.
Right.
They're certainly not going to risk his health to rush him back because right now there's not a reason to rush him back. If you when you get him back, you want him back at 100%, and there's still several more years on that contract at a lot of money, and he is the most important player on that team. You don't want to risk him injuring himself further or having a setback and then he's done for the year. So I think they're going to take their time and make sure he is fully healthy before he's back. Like I say, right now, they expect that he'll be back. And I believe that if they can get him back, even with 2 weeks to go in the season, and he can get 40 at bats to get himself, get his timing back and just get himself feeling comfortable, as long as he is Aaron Judge for
Mm-hmm.
game one of
Yeah.
either the wild card series or the division series, whatever they end up playing, that gives them their best chance to advance in October.
Mark, let's switch gears to the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wasn't high on the Mets at the start of the season. However, I don't think anybody thought they'd be. I certainly didn't think they'd be this bad. I mean, they're 2.5 games ahead of the Rockies for the worst record in all of baseball, with a massive payroll. It's just it couldn't have been a bigger disaster than it's been, and they got a huge, pile of bodies here to climb out of, and it's not going to be easy, and they can't do it at one trade deadline. I mean, let's start with this first of all, which has nothing to do with this. And as a Cubs fan, I can laugh at the Mets for this, but it's got to just kill them, that Pete Crow Armstrong trade right now. I mean, just absolutely kill them.
I don't know if it's going to go down as the worst trade in baseball history, but it's certainly tracking towards being in the conversation.
Yes.
Not that Javier Baez was bad for the Mets by any means during his brief stint, but you traded a guy who was in the MVP conversation at age 23?
Yeah.
For a guy who you had for 2 months. And you knew you were only going to have for 2 months. So I think that's one that you'll certainly regret for a while if you're a Mets fan, and you'll love it if you're a Cubs fan. But we don't know how these things turn out. Look, after 2 years of being in the big leagues, it looked like the Gleyber Torres deal was going to be this ultimate score for the Yankees. 38 home runs and a couple All-Star games, and they got him for 2 months at Chapman. And look, the Cubs would never undo that. Gleyber Torres could have been a 9-time All-Star.
Yes.
And Theo Epstein would say, okay, price of playing poker.
Right,
we won the World Series with Chapman. We ended that curse, and who cares? It was totally worth it. When Theo made the trade, he knew he was giving up a player who could very well come back to haunt him, but he won the World Series and basically etched his name into Cooperstown by doing that. So, you wouldn't regret that. But Glaber's fallen off. Glaber has, after those two
Yeah.
All-Star appearances, Glaber hasn't been that 38 home run
Nope.
guy. So look, maybe we're seeing the best of PCA right now.
Possible.
And 4 years from now, we're going to be saying, remember back in 2026 when that looked like it was going to be the worst trade in baseball history? Now it's just merely a pretty bad trade.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that one, I'm sure Mets fans are watching Pete Crow Armstrong on a nightly basis, or
Yeah.
seeing his highlights and as the best defensive player in the game and a guy who can really make things happen at the plate and on the base paths. And just say, man, that would have been really nice to have in the outfield right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Who on the Mets do you think is definitely gone this trade deadline?
Well, I mean, you start with Freddie Peralta,
Yeah.
which the question is, what are they going to get back for him? I mean,
Another
he's having a
terrible
dreadful
trade.
season.
Yeah.
He's having a dreadful season. He's been even worse in the last 6 or 8 starts. He doesn't throw more than 5 innings a night.
Yeah.
But he doesn't cost a lot of money. He's free agent after the year, and some team is going to say, you know what, if we can get him in with our pitching coach and put him into a pennant race and reinvigorate him a little bit. We've seen what he can do when he was in Milwaukee.
Yep.
It's worth a gamble. So he will be traded. Clay Holmes, as long as his rehab assignment goes well, he's making his first outing on Thursday in Syracuse. Uh, we forget that before the season took a really bad turn, Clay Holmes was one of the brightest spots for the Mets this year, right? He had 2.39 ERA and 9 starts. Took that comebacker off his leg, fractured leg. That's an unfortunate situation for him and for the Mets. But if he can show he's healthy, I think he gets moved. He's got a chance to opt out of his contract. I think he makes 12 million next year if he doesn't
Yeah.
opt out. And based on what he did earlier this year, what he did last year as a starter, remember he signed that contract when he was still a reliever, and they were planning on moving him into the rotation. Now
Right.
he's shown that he can do the job as a starter, so he will. He will opt out, I would imagine, as long as he's healthy. So I think he'll get moved. Brooks Raley, AJ Minter, really good lefty relievers who are having very good seasons. They are both free agents at the end of the year. So those 4 players are all free
Yeah.
agents at the end of the year, and I fully expect they'll get moved. The only other guy I think has a likely chance to get moved is Luke Weaver, because relief pitching is so in demand at the deadline every year. And with so few teams right now in that seller's position, Weaver's got one more year left. I think at $11 million. It's a reasonable rate for a guy who pitches the way he does and can really be a good late inning, solid eighth inning guy. You could use him as a closer if you wanted to. He doesn't have a ton of closing experience, but could do the job. So I think the 4 expiring contracts in Weaver are the 5
Yeah.
that I would watch. I don't think you're seeing the Mets get rid of any of those big contracts, because either
Yeah.
they're bad contracts or they're contracts they don't want to move.
Yeah, one of those obviously is Lindor, who's not having a good season. Obviously, overall, he's been a good Met. Where I normally talk sports in Cleveland, fans are sentimental about the possibility of getting Lindor back, and I've told people that's not happening. I don't even know that he's really. The Guardians need more of an outfielder anyway, but they're not. I think there's a lot of sentiment from other fan bases that the Mets would eat a good chunk of that contract to trade him. I don't know if I buy that. What do you buy about that situation?
Well, here's the biggest thing. He's got
Yeah.
a full no trade clause. He's a
Right.
10-5 player. So you can eat as much of the contract as you want. If he's not willing to get traded and go somewhere else, it's
That's
not
true.
happening. And I can't say that I know Francisco Lindor very well personally. I mean, I've dealt with him a number of times, and he's
Yeah.
always been very nice and pleasant. And uh, but there's a chip on his shoulder right now, I think, with the way
Oh,
this
sure.
season has gone, with the way that people are talking about him and potentially shipping him out of town, and all the problems, or at least supposed problems, between him and Juan Soto. This was his team before
Yeah.
Juan Soto got here. And I would find it hard to believe that he is going to let himself be the one sent packing for Juan Soto to basically move him out of town.
Yeah.
I think he knows he's got an owner who he gets along with, who spends money,
Yeah.
who's always going to do what he has to do financially to keep the Mets in a contending situation. Now, obviously, this year is not a contending situation.
Yeah.
Last year ended up not being a contending situation, but they're never going to go into a season saying, man, if the Mets had only spent money on some free agents this winter.
Yeah.
So I find it hard to believe that unless the absolute perfect ideal scenario presents itself, and I don't even know what that scenario would be, I find it hard to believe Lindor would say, yeah, no problem, trade me. I think he's a
Right.
Met. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I agree. Who do you think, if you had to bet right now, Who do you think is the biggest name that gets traded at the deadline? Tough question, but
nobody from the 6 teams that we know are sellers, that's for sure.
okay, yeah,
Because I'm not sure there is a quote unquote really big name on those teams that I
that's
can see
fair.
moving. Right, the Angels aren't trading Mike Trout, the Royals aren't trading
Yeah,
Bobby Witt, and as I
right.
said, I don't think the Mets are trading Lindor. Uh, if I had to pick a name right now, I'd still say it's Skubal.
Yeah,
I don't think the Tigers do enough to pull themselves back in the race. Even if they can get within 4 or 5 games, you've got like 6 teams in between them and the last wild card spot. So not only do you have to keep winning, but you need a bunch of teams in front of you to start losing
right.
because you just don't control your own fate. So if I had to guess the biggest name we see moved, I'd have to say it's Skubal.
Mark, that there's 3 teams. I just want to wrap up with this. There's 3 teams in baseball that, to me, stand out as consistently year after year do more with less, even though none of these teams have won a championship.
Let me guess. Let me guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
Milwaukee,
Yes,
Tampa Bay, and Cleveland.
yes, absolutely, and it's really amazing. And in a way, I kind of got to give Tampa Bay the most credit because they play in the AL East with these behemoth teams, with the Yankees who spend crazy and the Red Sox, and obviously Baltimore's not afraid to spend on some level, in Toronto, coming off a World Series appearance. But they're always in the mix. It's incredible what these 3 teams do. But specifically, because you see them obviously the most playing the Yankees, Tampa Bay. And half the time I look at that team and I'm like, on paper, they don't even look that good. They look fine. But they don't look like they should have the best record in the American League. And here they are every year in contention. It's amazing.
They're a marvel, and it's a
Yeah.
credit to their front office, and they've had a really good front office for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
going back to when they first became relevant back in the late 2000s, Andrew Friedman building that team up. They got to the World Series in '08, after they had basically been a punching bag for the
Yeah.
first, what, 9, 10 years of their existence.
Right.
And then Friedman leaves for LA, and Eric Neander and Chaim Bloom take over and don't seem to miss a beat. Bloom leaves, he goes to Boston. Now he's in St. Louis. Eric Neander has been one of the best executives in baseball for a long time,
Yeah.
and their system, whether you're talking about their development system, their drafts, their free agent signings, minor league free agents, international signings, they just find guys
Yeah.
who come out, do the job. They don't have the big sexy names, or I mean, their lineup right now, most baseball fans
Yeah.
couldn't name 3 players in their lineup, and
Yeah.
yet they have 3 excellent players:
Yeah.
Junior Caminero, Yandy Diaz, Jonathan Aranda. Uh, After that, I mean, you could probably hit 6 for them this year based on what we've seen,
Yeah.
and yet they pitch, they catch the ball, they
Yeah.
run aggressively, they play defense, and they pitch, they pitch,
Yeah.
they pitch, they pitch, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. They acquired Brian Baker in a
He's
minor
been
trade,
unbelievable.
and nobody, and it
Yeah.
barely registered on the league's radar. And now he's an all-star closer this year. So,
Yeah.
I think for them getting back to the Trop, as much as everybody wants to mock Tropicana Field,
Yeah.
just getting back into their home surroundings after playing a year in
Yeah.
Steinbrenner Field, I think helped them a lot. I think last year may have toughened them up a little bit, right? You
Yeah.
play a year in a minor league ballpark, across town from where you normally play. It's probably a little bit more of a drive than you're used to every day. Certainly, the conditions in Tampa in the summer are just brutal. I'm sure every player there was
Yeah.
thrilled to get back into their 72-degree climate controlled
Oh,
dome.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, they just figure out a way, and they've just been a pest for the Yankees for, I mean, we're going on 2 decades now, where even in their bad years, they're a tough out, and they haven't
Yeah.
had that many bad years in that time. But you're right, to go up against the Torontos, the Bostons, New York, teams that spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about what the Rays do year in, year out.
It's an unbelievable franchise. Mark, you're an unbelievable writer and reporter, and I appreciate you taking the time joining us today. Thank you, Mark.
It's nice to actually see you. Usually you're just a voice on the other end of the
That's
phone.
true.
So this is the technology. Look at what we're doing, Bull.
It is amazing, right? All these years. I remember when I started in this business, I was cutting up reel-to-reel tape, and thankfully that doesn't exist anymore.
I did that. I interned at FAN in 1995, so I'm familiar with the cutting up of reel-to-reel tape, and taking phoners and having to run the reels and then slice them up. That was I don't miss that. I'll tell you that.
Definitely not. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. This is the New York Sports Rush. We'll talk to you next time. Brought to you by Bet Rivers.